What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Now. Today we're doing the closer report for Week 9. There are so many battles out there, guys, that we just got to jump right into the content. First, I want to start with a little bit of a struggling closer, Garcia here for Miami. He's looked so dominant pretty much all year, and I think the only reason that he finds himself on my list of struggling to watch is because I watched his last two starts. I've been watching Miami. I saw his last two outings. Last outing gave up 3 earned. The outing before that, he gave up another earn, took 2 losses in both of those games. Something just didn't look right. Hopefully, it is just a matter of a couple of bad outings here, and he'll get back on track here. We kind of saw this the other day, or a few weeks ago, with Brad Hand. He just didn't look right. It might have been a timing thing of when we do this video. I hope that's the case. Everything else seems solid, but hopefully he can get back on track. Moving right into the battles here, Baltimore all of a sudden is a battle. Valdez had this job locked down. In fact, I think we graduated him at one point, but then all of a sudden, boom, ERA goes flying up there. He's blowing saves left and right here. He's given up 3 earned and I think back-to-back outings, which has opened the door now for a couple of guys here. Sulcer last year was the guy who was their closer, and he looked decent. He wasn't great, but he got the job done for the most part last year, and he's looking really good again this year. I know some people are talking about Paul Fry. He also is kind of in this mix of guys. Right now, it's a mess. So I think if you're this desperate for saves, you got more problems than this. I mean, Baltimore has lost, 16 of their last 17 games or something like that. So it's not like there's a lot of opportunity here. And even with that, it's like, are they going to have a lot of opportunity going forward? Probably not. But it's interesting to keep an eye on and just note that this is now a battle. And there are opportunities here for somebody. And moving on here to Tampa Bay, really interesting one for me is because I think Diego Castillo was also a guy that we graduated, and it was like, all right, this guy set him off to the sun. He's doing so well. He's pretty much dominating. And then all of a sudden he gets hurt, and then he comes back, and he's not really handed that closer job anymore. I went to the Springs. It went to Fairbanks. It's kind of gone. He had an opportunity, and he closed it. But now all of a sudden, with such a great name, by the way, JP Fireeisen. I mean, doesn't that just sound like a closer? Doesn't that sound like somebody who's going to be good at being in the bullpen? Fireeisen. I mean, that's so cool. But he's gotten 3 saves over the last week here, and he's locked it down really. So I think that Fireeisen might be the guy. He's probably the guy to own right now for fantasy purposes. But Diego Castillo is still there, and I don't really know why he would completely go away. If Fireeisen has any issues whatsoever, Castillo's there, Peter Fairbanks is there. There's a lot of people there. But right now, Fireeisen, that's the guy. Going into kind of back-to-back here, we're going into true committee issues here, really, for fantasy owners. It's an issue. Robles has looked really good, and honestly, so has Rogers. Rogers has looked really good too. Once Colome kind of exited the stage, it basically led to Rogers being the guy. And I remember once he got that job, he kind of struggled a little bit, and Robles kind of snuck his way in, and Robles has looked really good. So now Robles is like Colome, and Rogers is still like Rogers. Yeah, really confusing, right? Basically, what I'm getting at is Rogers is and Robles they're going out there, and God only knows which one's actually going to get the save opportunity each night, because they alternate. They really do. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the next one, which is Oakland. Trivino and Dykeman, basically, they're interchangeable at this point. In fact, if you look at the screen right now, their statistics are basically the same. Yeah, Dykeman's got a little bit higher of a ERA, but he's got more Ks. But blown saves versus saves, it's all basically the same. If I'm watching Oakland, which I watch a lot of Oakland this year, it seems like they go with Trivino if they're both available, but they just interchange these guys. It's kind of like Cleveland, Clase is the guy if they're both available, but Karinchak is always there, so it's an interesting one. A battle here in Seattle. Okay, so Graveman goes down. He goes on the COVID list, and it was at a time where it was like, okay, Graveman's about to take Montero's job, and he's just going to run with it, and there's no doubt about it that Montero's about to lose this job. Well, not so fast. So with Graveman going on the COVID list, Montero basically had another shot to prove himself, and he's gotten 2 saves. He's only had 1 earned in his last 4 outings. So yeah, you can look at the ERA and say, oh yeah, he's still in 5 blown saves. Yeah, when Graveman comes back, they're still gonna. I don't think so. I think Montero right now is looking better than he has all year. So I don't think they're going to shuffle this up again. I think Graveman's going to have to earn his way back up to that top of that list, and Montero's going to have to struggle for him to lose it. Who would have thought after that? Life is very weird sometimes. Another interesting one here. Stallmont goes on the DL, who has been clear leader. I think I was going to put him as the clear, decisive leader, but I can't right now because he obviously went on the DL. And Greg Holland has come in, and he has been really good all of a sudden. Let's see. He's got a save over the last week. No earned over the last 4 outings, which is great. I kind of have my over the last 7 days kind of thing up on my screen that you guys can't see. This is overall statistics. I kind of have the last 7 days, so we can kind of talk about that. But Holland has looked phenomenal over the last 7 days here. So Stallmont comes back. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's going to be an interesting one. You have a vet that's pitching well, and the up and comer who's also pitching well. So we'll have to see. Okay, Cincinnati, brutal. It's hard to watch sometimes. At least I guess for fantasy purposes, Amir Garrett is out of the picture. Like he's got to be at this point. But what makes this interesting is, I own Lucas Sims in my league as just like a super backup kind of closer. Hope he gets in there kind of thing. And you can see the elevated ERA. Antone has, a much better ERA. He's pitching much better. But once they put him in the closer spot, he couldn't do anything with it. He struggled. That's when all of his runs basically came, was when he was in the 9th inning. Sims over the last 7 has had 2 save opportunities and has closed them both down. So it's kind of an interesting one. I feel like they're tending to go to Sims in the 9th, and they're going with Antone more in the middle. Like Antone is more like Karinchak, and Sims is more like Clase, if that makes sense. Really, really tough one to peg, but at least it seems like Amir Garrett is out of the picture, so we can kind of narrow this down a little bit. Moving on, we got Crichton and Soria. I wanted to put Crichton in the category of almost graduates at this point, but I can't because Soria is pitched so well over the last really 2 weeks. He went down, he went, on the DL stint. I can't remember what it was exactly, but there just hasn't been opportunity in Arizona. There just hasn't been. And so it's hard to kind of peg what's going on because they're both pitching pretty well, but Soria has been pitching better than Crichton. And so it's kind of like, what do we do with this situation? With no save opportunities, what are we supposed to do? We're going to sit here and speculate and wait till next week. We're going to watch next week's episode. San Francisco is interesting as well. They're all interesting. I probably say that for every single one as we go on here, but Rogers and his last outing gave up 3 earned. Really did not look good. Prior to that, though, he's been absolutely domination, and he's gotten every single opportunity basically for the last week. McGee has really, he started the season as a pure closer, and, he's looked a little bit better lately. He seems more like the guy to come in for spot saves now when Rogers is unavailable. But with Rogers having a bad kind of start there, it maybe it opens the door a little bit more. I thought that these two guys would kind of go in tandem, but it doesn't seem to be the case. I think Rogers is the guy, but with McGee here, it's never out of the picture. Moving on to Detroit, it's funny. Detroit is actually winning games. They swept the Yankees, and they're playing really well against Milwaukee there, but no save opportunities. So are kind of like, is Michael Fulmer really going to be the guy? Is Soto going to kind of set off into the sun? Is that going to really happen? We don't know. Have no idea. I think Fulmer's still probably the closer at this point. Soto's right behind him, so it's kind of good for Detroit. They kind of have a decent back of the rotation bullpen, so it's good for Detroit. I like to see that. And then we're getting into who we've been talking about this whole time. Clase seems to be the guy in the 9th that they want to give the ball to if they both are available. Karinchak's obviously dominant. What's funny to me about this, and the reason I still have them on there, they're both fantasy relevant, and it seems like for some reason in fantasy leagues, I just checked, Clase is only owned in 60% of leagues, and Karinchak is owned in like 95. So Clase gets most of the saves, or at least equal the amount, and has been just as good, if not better, fantasy-wise than Karinchak. Maybe not in real life, but fantasy-wise, and he's owned significantly less, so that's really kind of strange. Last one we have on here, Jordan Romano seems to be running away with this. I think that this is probably going to be the point where we can maybe graduate him even. Dolis is looking good still. He still looks good, but Romano has locked down his last two save chances, looked really good, and he is finally pitching in kind of back-to-back games. He struggled early in the season, but really has settled down. So good for him. Good for Toronto, who looks really good right now. Imagine if they had Springer. Oh boy. Imagine if they had a full line. Man, it's kind of hard to think about. But anyway, guys, that's the closer report. Let's go pick up the right guys. It's a tough one. There's so many battles. There's so many opportunities out there for people. But we'll see you next time.